It's time to enter with each Bible study. Take this opportunity to welcome everyone here tonight. Certainly do appreciate your presence. Also, if you're joining us online tonight, we appreciate you. We're online each Wednesday at 7 p.m., each Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. And again, if you know of anyone that might benefit from our online service, please help us spread the word. We want to certainly continue to remember all those that we mentioned Sunday that's on our sick list. I want to give a quick update. Bill, and as all of you know, Sunday, Joan was home sick. Bill told me it possibly was COVID then. Of course, Joan has COVID as well as the shingles. She's dealing with both of them tonight. And talked to Phil just a few minutes ago, He's not been tested yet, but he said, don't think it's going to do any good. I'm already running the field. So there's a real possibility the field is dealing with it also. And also, Sister Dottie Smith, Dottie called Cece just a few minutes ago, and she also was dealing with COVID today. So keep all these in your prayers that they can have a mild case and so forth. Also, Catherine Smith, did Catherine get to go to rehab? Or
she's in Memphis. She's going to be over there for 2 weeks.
Okay.
On health.
Okay, this is Catherine Smith. Oh, okay, this is Mary Berlin's sister-in-law. She was married to Vernon. She broke her leg, so please remember her. And also Doyle Spencer. He will be having a heart on the valve on the 11th of October. This is Rosie's husband. Most of you know Rose Nell. Anyway, she's Judy and I first cousin, Mary Berlin niece. I'll get right in a minute, but anyway, please remember him. Also, I'm sure a lot of you know David Bass lives up at Loxley Chapel. David's a good friend of mine. His mom passed away yesterday morning. Her funeral will be tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Her visitation will be from 12 until 1, and she's over at Memorial. But anyway, I said David and I have been friends for a long time. Please remember this family. Is there anyone else that I've overlooked? Anyone knows about? Oh, also, I'm sure all of you see on the news where this hurricane is really hammering the state of Florida. I was just asking Lisa if it's going to affect where Brad's at, because I know Brad's close to Orlando, and he had brought Tim went and met him and got his wife and the kids and bringing them up here. Brad is going back to work, but he's supposed to get there. I think you said this evening about Thursday, sometime tomorrow. Is that right, Lisa?
Actually, I haven't seen it.
Okay, but I think it's tomorrow they're supposed to get where he's at. So please remember Brad and Tim and the families that are traveling back. I think they're in Birmingham on the way back to Birmingham. So remember them as well. And is there anyone else now that I need to mention? Sissy's brother, I told you Sunday that he was having surgery yesterday. I really had that messed up. It's next Tuesday. He had it pre-op yesterday, and he'll be having his surgery next Tuesday. So please remember him. Also, Dwayne Rickland. Dwayne is still in the ICU. They can't get his oxygen level up where it needs to be. Every time he sits up or anything, his oxygen falls. They can't seem to find what's going on. And also, Gloria Greenhall. Gloria is still in the hospital in St. Francis. Understand now that there's a hole in her stomach, that they're not going to release her till that heals up. She still has the feeding tube as well as the drain tube. So I think we figured up last night about 50-something days. Bless her heart, she's been there in St. Francis. So anyway, please remember Gloria. Are there any updates on anyone else that's gone over? Nelson was out Sunday. I understand his leg was bleeding. So please remember Nelson. He's having quite a bit of problem with his legs at this time. So keep him in your prayers too. If I've overlooked someone, please let me know so we can make that known. Gospel meeting, October the 9th through the 12th at Danville Church of Christ. Service will be each evening at 7 p.m., so keep that in mind. Also the lock-in, September the 30th, over at the Fellowship Building. Young people, keep that in mind, and bring a friend. Keep that in mind. Also, our trunk or treat, the 22nd. thank all of you for changing that, but I had a conflict going on. I was trying to figure out how I was gonna make both of them work, and whenever Judy called and said Karen called her, that really took a load off my shoulders, so I definitely want to try to do both, but anyway, so it will be the 22nd, and that'll be the weekend before. So, we can have a hayride if y'all want to have a hayride, do that. Now, I guess whether or not we go over to Phil Jones is gonna have a lot to do with how well they do. And I was just thinking this afternoon, Ronnie, we wanted to do a bonfire over at the fellowship. Did we do that one time? Okay, so if we can't go over to, you know, they're not where we can go over there, we can do the bonfire out there and go from estimate. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
We got a
we can
barn.
do it.
Got a band burners right now.
Oh, yeah, well, maybe it'll be over with, but then if it ain't, we'll have to change that. Yeah, if y'all want to, that's fine, just let me know. I'll get John hooked up, he can pull the wagon, so all right.
I think the walk in, they'll be at 7 o'clock, starting here at church.
Oh, is it starting here? Okay. Okay, all right, it starts here at the church, and then it's gonna move over to the fellowship?
I think they're gonna do everything.
Just because we can't have a bonfire over there, it's, you know.
Okay, so the lock-in then will be here at the church. The entire thing will be here at the church. Is there anything else I'm missing? Anyway, that's what we're doing, my paper. But, first Sunday fellowship meal, it's this Sunday. Is that right? And Randy, your birthday, I thought about it, is Friday. I'm sorry.
What you did?
Be sure and ask that service. But anyway, happy birthday.
the same thing, Bob.
Same thing we got in mind?
Yeah, we'll do the same.
All right, good deal. Anyway, Randy's is Friday, then we got a whole host of birthdays going on in October. Ellen Carroll, me and Stacy has an anniversary. Vera Trimble has a birthday, hers is the 9th. Chad Simmons has one the 10th. Brad Young the 9th, and Clay Young the 9th. That's still the good ones. But anyway, happy birthday to all these.
Here's the 8th, mine's the 8th on Saturday.
What do you mean? Who told me the 9th? They said the 8th. Vera Trimble's birthday is on the 8th, it's not the 9th. So, Mary, you may have been very appropriate that done that to me. But anyway, sorry about that, dear. It ain't the first one I made today either. Anyway, order of worship tonight, Brother Ronnie will be leading our singing. Tommy, you have the opening prayer. Randy, you have the closing prayer. And I have the invitation. Brother Ronnie.
All three verses of 14. He leadeth me, O blessed God, O worker heavenly, comfort from whate'er I do, where I be, till 'tis God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me by his own hand, he leadeth me. His faithful power I would be, for by his hand he leadeth me. Sometimes it's of defense, sometimes free, our sin. Why water still, or trouble sea, still 'tis God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me. me by his own hand he leadeth me. His faithful power I would be, for I stand. And when my days on earth is done, when thy grace and victory won, in this no way I will not flee. Still, he leadeth me by his own hand. He leadeth me. His faithful power I would be, for by his hand he leadeth me.
Let's pray. Father, we come this time, thank you for your paralyzed another day. Thank you for all the wonderful and beautiful things that you give us each day. Father, we come this time and thank you for giving us the freedom that we have here to study thy word, to grow stronger in thy word, be able to provide also in the soldiers that yet continue to be a brother John and see laborers here. May have a long, fruitful life. We ask you, Father, to be with the ones that are leadership of this country, that we may live in peace and harmony someday, all this turmoil will end. Father, we ask you to be with the ones that fight the flood and hurricane in Florida, with all the families, that they may be safe at night, no one can come to any harm. Father, we ask you to be with our elders, decisions here, be right with thee, also we ask you to be with our deacons. Father, we ask you to be with each one of us, and if we fall short of thee, sin. We ask you to give us our sins. Father, we especially thank thee for sending our Son down on the cross. Someday we may have a home in heaven. As we go to our classes, we ask you to be with thee. We ask you to continue to be with each one of us as we go to our homes tonight, later each day. Father, we ask you to continue with us always.
All right. You guys are all doing well today. Had a good week so far. I have that we are on page 86. Last week we got down to the answer in a few words. And so what we'll do is we should finish the questions today. I don't know if we'll get to start chapter 13 or not. We'll see what happens to our time. But we'll just play it by ear. So really with the answer in a few words, I don't put a lot down for these most of the time, usually because they tend to allow for a good deal of discussion. And so I don't put very much down here for these, and then obviously we have multiple choice here in just a moment, but I also don't put anything down for the discussion questions because we usually end up talking about those a good bit. So anyway, so number one here on the answer in a few words, when we talk about rest, we spend a lot of time on this word here. And as you can see, it's not the R-E-S-T, it's the W-R-E-S-T. So when we talk about the rest in 2 Peter 3:16, what is it talking about here? What does that mean? What does rest mean here? Okay, it's a little more than just changing the scriptures. Yeah, it's more it's like you're wrestling with scripture. And it may not even be necessarily changing the scripture itself, but it's changing the meaning of the scripture to fit whatever agenda that you might have there with that. So good job there. What about number two? It says, why should we all use the same standard in religion? And what scripture so teaches?
First Corinthians.
Okay. Yeah. What I've got here is when I looked at this, why should we use the same standard in religion? A lot of it has to do with just really that entire section number 1. You know, yeah, 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 10 is a good one. But when we look at this, what are the effects of religious error? Why should we, you know, what is religious error? If you define religious error, it's anything that pulls away from Scripture, right? It's anything that deviates from Scripture. Okay? So anytime there's a deviation, what's the result? You know, number 1 here talks about sorrow. Okay, the effect of religious error can be seen in the story of the prophet of God. The old prophet is related in 1 Kings 13. Religious error, if you go down to number 4, religious error is destructive. Religious error causes division. Religious error renders our worship in vain. So any of those things could have answered that question. Why should we all use the same standard in religion? So we can avoid those traps. So we can avoid those effects, right? It's a simple cause and effect. What's the cause? The cause is the religious error. The effect is what? It's that list of things we just looked at. Right? Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone will be judged by that same standard. Okay? You know, anytime that if you were to be audited, what are you going to be audited by? Whatever that standard of tax is, right? Okay, whatever you are, if someone was to come look at your job and they're going to base your performance on largely your job description, right? That's going to be the standard that's there. In a similar sense, this is going to be kind of the same idea that we're going to see here. That's why we have that same standard. Okay, number 3. In what spirit is religious error to be opposed? Yeah, absolutely. If you want to find that in the book, it's on page 85. Section 4, the section about, it says, in view of the existence of religious error, what should the church do? What should we do? And the answer is in the spirit of love. It says we must oppose and expose religious error boldly and firmly. So that's part of it. Okay, that's part of the spirit that we're supposed to have. It's supposed to be boldly and firmly opposed, but we also have to have that spirit of love. Okay, if we do so, if we expose or oppose religious error, we do it boldly and firmly, but we lack love in that effort, what's going to happen? What do you think? If you see religious error and you approach it boldly and you're firm in your stance, but you don't approach it with love, what's going to be? Someone's going to be discouraged. Okay? And when we're talking about discouragement, we're talking about that you can very easily break someone's spirit. You can keep them away from the church. Absolutely. So, good job with that. All right. Anything else about that you need to mention? Okay. Number 4. It says, what are some religious errors resulting from the rejection of the Bible as the all-sufficient guide in matters religious?
Plan of salvation, miracles, speak tongues.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is, you can find this on page 84, section 3, what causes religious error, and number 2 here. It says the rejection of the Bible as the all-sufficient guide matters religious. Because of this rejection, we have those who believe in special revelations. Do we see people who believe in special revelations? Absolutely. Okay? Yeah. There are those who preach that miracles do occur to them. You have those that do believe that speaking in tongues is something that happens currently. Creeds and manuals have resulted from this rejection. Right? What is the only source that we should use? Well, it's the Bible. That's it. Okay? Anything else is too much. It's not needed. All right, but we still have people that want to promote that as something that's necessary when it's not.
There's also error in taking the Lord's Supper.
What's that?
There's also error with taking the Lord's Supper.
Okay.
Denominations don't usually take it first head lead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one too. This, as far as the Lord's Supper goes, what are we supposed to do?
I mean, that's really our main reason.
It's a big part of it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. It's a communion. What is the communion? What does the word mean? If you don't break that word apart, what does it mean? Okay.
Amen.
Okay. So this union, right? This unity. All right. What about that first part? Yeah, it's it. Okay, it's a common union, right? Wow, it's amazing how that works, right? Common union, okay? We have something common together, so we come together for the communion. Mind blown. It's English, right? It's great. It's a communion. Community union. All right, excellent. Okay, number 5. Okay, how is 1 Corinthians 15:8 often removed from its context and used to teach a false doctrine?
Some try to say Paul was on the road passage, and he was just called the Christ passage.
Right. What could Paul have done? Could he have done something other than what he did? What did Paul do? Okay. So what he could have looked at himself as a martyr for what he did, right? Had he chosen not to follow Christ, had he chosen not to do what Jesus told him to do. Okay? So Paul, he had a choice, right? And if he wanted to see again, what did he need to do? What Christ told him to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and look real quick at the multiple choice. Which 1 Kings 13, Genesis 3, or Jeremiah 23 relate the story of the prophet of God, the prophet. 1 Kings 13. Yeah, very good. So the Pope counsels and synods Christ exclusively is our authority in religion. Which one? Christ exclusively. That's kind of that's a given, right? I think everything that we've said up to this point is pretty. Elders are to be tolerant or are to exhort and convince false teachers. Yeah. Absolutely. Elders are to exhort and convince false teachers. What does that mean? Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's good. I'm glad you said that. That's right. Okay, so elders are to teach the false teachers, right? Okay, they have to build them up, not to continue to teach falsely, but to teach them the better way to do things. Okay, which it almost sounds like a contradictory thing. Okay, because a lot of times, what are false teachers wanting to do? A lot of times, false teachers, they teach things because they're doing so in a selfish manner, right? Because they're doing what with the scripture? They're wrestling with it, right? So, when you think about the responsibility of the eldership, okay, this is something else that they have to do. Okay, aside from just leading the flock that's here, they have to deal with people who are trying to teach things that are not true. So add that to a list of their responsibilities.
False teachers, false meaning. Way you look at saying, or making my opinion, keeping our opposed of the relationship, boldly opposed false teachers. Paul opposed them face to face.
Yeah.
Over, I've seen where it says, I said, it's see what I'm coming from?
Yeah. Okay, so another way to look at that word convince, it could be convict. Okay, and when we look at the word convict, there is what is it? What is a conviction?
You're supposed.
Yeah.
It's in the court of law. They're being convicted for what they've done.
Sure. Okay.
Here, I don't know if he's actually trying to say that. All I'm saying is, I think he would have been better off if you hold or something better than what he used. That's another record.
Well, it is and it's not.
Does this convict not mean to condemn?
It's kind of the same thing, yeah. Because in order to convict, you have to convince someone that something's happened. It's the same root word, right? And so it's when you say, okay, when it says to exhort and to convince, I do think that the better word there would be convict because of the connotation it carries. It means the same thing, basically. It's just that we have a different, when you say the word convince, it doesn't feel the same as convinced. Meaning is basically the same, but we just feel differently about it. So when we look at that, okay, so you lift them up, you build them up, and you convince them or you convict them that the things that they've done before are not the correct way to handle things, then at that point you may see you may see a change. You may not, but then at that point, because they've been lifted up in front of other people, what's happened? Now you've exposed that false teaching, right? Does that make sense? And so then I really think that that's more what is being said here than anything else. I think there's an exposure that happens, but I think it's because of the exhortation and because of the conviction that happens too. So I think it means the same thing. I think he just went around the world to say it. Okay. All right. Number 4, the rock in Matthew 16:18 refers to Peter or Peter's confession. It's Peter's confession. Very good. Built of the flesh in 1 Peter 3:21 refers to dirt or sin. Dirt. Yeah. Very good. Okay. 1 Timothy 5:23, it sanctions social drinking. It teaches that Timothy could use wine for medicinal purposes. Yep. Okay. All right. Let's look at the discussion questions. What were the far-reaching consequences of religious error for Jeroboam?
I worship the Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you go to on page 83, it talks about the effects that are seen in Jeroboam. He changed the object of worship, he changed the place of worship, he changed the time of worship, he changed the priesthood. He departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, or similar statement. Okay, so a lot of things that he did. It says, further down, it says the sins of Jeroboam is mentioned, should be are mentioned. The sins are mentioned more than 20 times in Scripture. And his sins cast their dark shadows across 15 reigns of the kings of Israel. So, how far-reaching was his? How far-reaching were his sins? Quite a long time, right? Over quite a large region. Absolutely. Okay. Number 2, it says, discuss the reality, nature, characteristics, method of operation, doctrines, and destiny of false teachers, as discussed in 2 Peter and or Jude. So what's the reality of false teachers? What's the reality now of false teachers? Yeah, absolutely. They lead people away from the truth. Okay? What's their nature? Why do they do that? Could be for personal gain. Okay? Could be because of ignorance. There's a few reasons as to why they do it. Their nature. Characteristics. I guess characteristics and method of operation can be very close to the same thing. Okay? Yeah, a lot of it has to do with certain lifestyle, and that's why they do what they do, right? Okay? When you talk about the televangelists like Joel Osteen, okay? He's everybody's favorite, right? He's in the news a lot. It's very rarely for a good reason that he's in the news. It wasn't that long ago, I think they found like $200,000 hidden in the closet somewhere inside his congregation. $100,000 just hiding. So, what is it that they do? When you see a lot of these televangelists, what are they asking? Money. I've legitimately heard one of them say that they have to buy a jet. They have to buy a jet. They don't need to just buy a plane ticket. They have to buy a jet. So what do they need? Money. Okay. Yeah. Gotta have a jet. Okay. Then that's going to be part of their doctrine. What is their doctrine? Is it a doctrine of truth, or is it a doctrine of lies? Deception? Yeah, absolutely. It's fraud, isn't it? Ultimately, what is their destiny?
Eternal punishment.
Eternal punishment. Absolutely. Yep. All right. Locate in total the number of times the word doctrine appears in 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus.
13 and 10, 4 and 5.
I mean, it's important. It's important. All right. Anything else that we need to discuss about this? We finished a little bit quicker than I anticipated, which is unusual. We're done early. It'll take a few minutes to go into the introduction here for the chapter 13, and this will be the last chapter in this book here. And then we will move on to something else. I'm not quite sure what yet, but it will be something that will be, I think, a little less deep than what some of these discussions have been. So, let's go ahead and take a look at this introduction here. The chapter 13, it says, "Shall your brethren go to war, and shall ye sit here?" Okay. Let's take a look at it. It says, "Before the death of Moses, the succession of Joshua and Israel's entrance into Canaan, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad being cattlemen, and seeing the land of Jezer and the land of Gilead, and that it was a place for cattle, requested of Moses that this land be their possession rather than a possession on the other side of Jordan. Moses replied, 'Shall your brethren go to war, and shall ye sit here?' However, the Reubenites and the Gadites promised, 'We will build sheepfolds here for our cattle and cities for our little ones, but we ourselves will go ready armed before the children of Israel. We will not return to our houses until the children of Israel have inherited every man his inheritance.' Whereupon Moses agreed, 'If ye will do this thing, then afterward ye shall return and be guiltless. But if ye will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out.' They were faithful to their agreement." What was the agreement?
They were going back to the other tribes as long as they were set in their land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, take a look at this next thing, because I think some of this could be very interesting. The discussion could turn pretty interesting in the next week or so. I said, since the Old Testament has been abrogated, we are no longer under it. Okay, using context clues, what does that mean? Abrogated. No, wait. That's good. Yeah. We're no longer under that Old Testament, right? It's been nailed to the cross. Very good. However, it's been recorded and preserved for our learning and admonition. And the text for this lesson and its setting is especially applicable for us today in the church, since we too are at war. Okay? So here we are looking at, we're looking, how is the church, how are we as Christians at war? With Satan? Yeah. Okay. On a day-to-day basis, what are some of the battles that we have to face? Every single one of us, we have our own battles that we have to deal with, right? And so, this is, in the Old Testament, the battles that they fought were more physical than ours, right? Than what we have to deal with now. Okay, we live in a country in which we're very fortunate. Okay, it's fair to say that none of us in here have had to fight a religious war. Okay, or most of us haven't had to fight in a war period. Right? Some of us may have been present Iraq War, right? So even then, some of us, Vietnam would have been it, that, Korea, then World War II, right? None of us have been in World War II. Okay, some of us, maybe, how many, is there anyone else? Nelson was in Korea. This really what caused his leg injury, isn't it? Yeah. So he still deals with some of that today. Okay? But none of us have had to deal with anything like that, or, I don't know everybody's history, but here we're not talking about that. We're talking about religious battles, right? Okay? What was the promise that they had then in the Old Testament? Okay, let's look at number one here. Okay, as a nation, they were to conquer the promised land. Okay, what was the promise? Yeah, so they were going to have they had a land. Okay, and yeah, was it going to be easily obtained? No, it wasn't. Okay, when you think about our promise, okay, what is our promise? Yeah. Is that easily obtained?
It's not.
It's not. It's not. So when we look at the war that they faced, and we look at the war that we face currently, it's not too dissimilar. The fronts that we face may be different, but for all intents and purposes, we still have a similar battle to fight. Here it says God promised this land to them. According to God's instruction, the land was to be inherited by tribes. Nevertheless, in the taking of the land, they were all to fight. Okay? Who all had to fight? Everybody. Yeah. Okay? In a similar sense, how many of us have to fight? All of us. Every day. Absolutely. Okay.
You know what, John?
What's that?
Just look at our fight compared to the early Christians.
Mm-hmm.
We don't.
Not nearly.
They had to fight
Mm-hmm.
for their lives as well as try to put us out.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't have that. I mean, we might have a little mental person.
No, not nearly as much as they did.
Some of the lands that our missionaries are working, they some physical.
Sure.
It's
No, the biggest thing that we have to deal with is people on Twitter. That's good. I mean, if you stay away, I mean, if you stay away from social media, then you don't have to deal with it as much. That said, there is, and that's kind of the thing that makes me worry about the younger generations, is because while it's not Twitter, there is some other form of social media, and the Christian is under attack on these social media platforms. And, for a certain generation of people, it might be Twitter, it might be Facebook. For this younger generation, it's going to be Snapchat, and it's going to be TikTok, and whatever the newest one is. There's something else, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, but there's always something, right? And the war, the battlefront, it's completely different. I think we're about out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and mark this down. I'm going to pick up number 1 next week. Again, so that's going to be October. Yeah.
Our invitation song in just a moment will be 915 on Christmas Brother Bunny. First Peter chapter 5, verse 8 says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, Satan, goes about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour." If any of you have ever seen any of these videos about the lions in Africa and the way they go after their prey and so forth, they're very, very dangerous. But when you watch one of them, just think about it. They're not near as dangerous as Satan is. Not near as dangerous. We go back and we read in the Old Testament books of Isaiah and also Ezekiel. Where did Satan start out at? He started out in heaven. God, which his name at that time was Lucifer, meaning morning star. You know, Lucifer became so impressed with his own beauty, intelligence, power, and position that he began to desire for himself the honor and glory that belonged to God alone. Also, the same story is in Ezekiel. I paraphrase some. You could read that in Ezekiel 14, Isaiah 14, starting verse 12. While he is there in heaven with God, he's so impressed with himself, he's so full of himself, that he thinks he deserves the power that God's got. He starts his persuasion at the same time. He persuades other angels to follow him. There's a whole number of lessons that can be preached just from his fall from heaven. But his persuasion was so strong that he was able to persuade other angels to follow him. He became so corrupt and everything, so when God cast him out of heaven along with the angels that he persuaded to follow him, this is when his name changed. Changed to Satan. Translated means adversary. So we know that he has the power of persuasion. We know that he is here on this earth with one thing in mind, and that's to destroy our soul. In James chapter 4, verse 7, God tells us to resist him, and he will flee from us for a little while. But that's all. He's just going to leave us alone for a little while, and he's coming back. And he goes on in verse 8, and he tells us, draw nigh to God, and he'll draw nigh to us. God doesn't leave us, we leave God. But Satan is wanting to do exactly what that lion is trying to do in the jungle. His favorite ploy is to separate his prey from the rest of the herd. And in doing so, it makes it easier for him to make his kill, so to speak. Satan wants to separate us from God. The further he can separate us from God, the more power he has over us. And remember this, the only power that he has over us is just what we give him. Satan has no more power over us than what we give him. Satan cannot tempt us any further than what we will allow him to do. But his power comes from when we allow him to cause us to do things. He has more and more and more control over us. And the more control over us he gets, the harder it is to break free from it. But keep in mind, his number one goal is to destroy our soul. He knows what his judgment is. He knows what's going to happen to him on Judgment Day. But he wants to take the entire world with him. And that's his goal, is to cause us all to be lost. And just keep in mind, the further he can, God doesn't move. He stays in the same place. We move from him. And the further Satan can separate us from him, more chance he has of defeating us. We have to put on the whole armor of God. We've got to put it here. We've got to put it here. That is our protection. That's how we know what we need to do. And by no means are any of us perfect. But he has told us over and over, he's here to help us. He wants to help us. We talk to him every day through prayer. That's how we gain our strength, is through prayer. Talking to him, telling him of our trials, our tribulations, and our troubles. If you're here tonight and you've allowed Satan in any way to separate you from God, make it back to that. If for some reason you've never confessed his sweet name and been baptized for remission of sin, don't put it off. Because I don't want to be a doomsday sayer, but we're closer today than we were yesterday. We'll be closer tomorrow than we were yesterday. This world is going to end. I don't know when. I don't know time, day. Not even Jesus knows. Only God himself. But it is going to end. And we're not ready. We're going to suffer the same fate as Satan, his angels. So if you got a need, won't you come while running out of this? 9:15. First, second, and fifth verse.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, for the glory he sheds on our way, while we do his good will, he abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Not a shadow can rise, not a cloud in the sky, but his smile quickly drives it away. Not a doubt nor a fear, not a sign or a tear, can abide while we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. In fellowship sweet, we will sit at his feet, or we'll walk by his side in the way. What he says we will do, where he sends we will go. Never fear, only trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's coming out tonight, visiting with us, or an honored guest, and ask you to come back anytime. Does anyone have any other announcements? Right. And, young people doesn't lock in here Friday night, starts at 7 o'clock. The young people here, bring a friend with you. Fellowship the other way. Okay, anything else? Prayer. Okay.
Our first time, Father, we thank thee, thank thee, Father, we pray that your blessing will be upon the sick, all over. Pray that your blessing means in you. Father, we pray for those that are free. Father, we pray that you follow those that pray that you will watch over them. Pray that once it's over, thank God, power, Father, we pray that